inside the shop, looking over Matt's car. Going to be installing a boost gauge today on the pillar here, and I believe it's a 2012, has a single turbo kit, and it's a pretty sick car. So first thing I'm noticing about this camera is it is not a wide angle, so gotta stand back pretty far to get any decent amount of content. And have the fan on, about to turn on the AC. There's AC. We'll see what kind of wind sound we get, because on the cheapo GoPro there was a ton of gnarly external wind sound, I guess. I don't know, it was awful, but anyways, we will set this up, and well, I'm trying to find my tripod. Oh, there it is. Alright, we'll be back in a minute. Quick update, got a lot of the car taken apart, well, a lot of the interior taken apart anyways. Something I didn't know, that if you unplug the headlight switch, it causes the headlights to come on automatically after a few minutes. So we unplug that, you'll see it'll start to freak out, and see? It'll just freak out, and just do this the whole time until you plug the headlight switch back in, and then it'll quit. I guess, I don't know if it's like a safety feature, or if Ford has it wired to the switches. The switch keeps the lights off while it's plugged in. I don't know. I thought that was kind of weird. And then we've got, of course, this whole section pulled off here all the way back to where it meets up with near the seatbelt pillar. And then all this has to come off, of course. You know, so you can get back in here and hide all your wiring and everything, make it look real nice and professional and whatever. And then you're gonna need to get to the light switch wiring, so that's why that's pulled. And then the under dash area, under the steering wheel, all that plastic comes off. And then I was able to feed this sensor, well, where's it at? I was able to feed this vacuum sensor, because it's an electronic gauge, not a manual gauge. I was able to feed it through up in here. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a hole up in there that it was a factory hole in the firewall, so that's good. Didn't have to drill any more holes in the firewall, because that's always a bummer. But luckily they found one that fit through without having to do any more drilling, so that's good. You could have left this sensor in the engine bay, but I mean, electronics and heat don't usually mix super well, so it'll probably have a longer life in here in the cab, you know, inside the car. You know, it'll probably just have a longer life. It bound to still go bad eventually. But anyways, so I'll show you out here. This is where we went through the firewall. I don't know what used to go through there, but it was a factory hole. The plug is missing. I'll recommend to the guy to get a washer, you know, a rubber washer in there at some point. It'll be easy to install later. And then, you know, we ran the vacuum hose around here. And this car is, like I said, it's a big single turbo. It is the GT, of course, turbo now. But anyways, there was a vacuum block here from the kit, from the turbo kit. We were able to tie in and get on this T here, tee it off, cap off the other end of the T there, and then lead that vacuum line for the boost gauge into the cab. And we'll update with some more here shortly. Alright, so this is the back of the headlight switch. Everything is plugged in. You want them all plugged in so that you know that everything is correlating with each other. A lot of times in these, especially in these newer cars, things are tied together. They don't work the same if everything's not plugged in. So what we have is, of course, access to the back of the wires, and you can set up like I have here with this multimeter, you know, with a piece of wire and a little alligator clip. I've got it all set up where I can get into the back of these wires without damaging anything, without disrupting anything. I can just get in there and see what has what kind of power and when. So the biggest thing is, so I have this probed into the back on this. I believe it's 2012 GT Mustang. Into this purple wire on the far top side or bottom side, whichever, depending on which way you want to look at it. I find that wire has power with the dash lights on, no matter what. And the big thing is you want to check to make sure that you not only have power in one position but all positions, because these newer cars they're kind of weird about stuff, and you'll find that, you know, sometimes it'll look like it's good but it won't have power in another setting. So this one here we're going to show you, so you won't be able to see everything, but you'll be able to see the meter here. So when I turn the parking lights on, it's got 12 volts, and then the headlights are on, 12 volts, and then off. Okay, so then if we go back, this right here is technically auto. So then your auto settings, it's going to be off also. So if your dash lights aren't on, your light to your gauge is not going to be on, which is what you want. So then you turn on your lights again, or even just your parking lamps, and what you want to check is you want to pull this out for fog lights to make sure you don't lose power. Because on some of these, when I was probing some of these wires, you'd have power in every position you need it in, but if you were to turn on your fog lights, you'd lose your backlight for your new gauge that you're installing, whether it be boost or whatever. So I found that in this particular car, like I said, I think it's 2012, this purple wire on this far end, on, you know, if you're looking at this being the top of the switch, you know, looking on the top far right side as you look at it, and that's going to be the correct power for your illumination wire. It's usually orange. I'll come back with more here shortly. Okay, so the switch in the same orientation, well, you have to find constant power. And with a lot of accessories, I would not recommend tying into a constant power on just any random constant power line. But this being a really small LED powered little boost gauge, it's not going to pull enough power to cause any problems. Most other things you're going to want to wire in a relay and go that route. But anyway, so this being in the same orientation, you know, switch upright. If you look at the back side on this side, sorry, it's getting blurry. On this, well, it's tough to see. I can't see it, but anyways, so I hope you can see this. This is actually where you adjust your brightness level, and I found that there is a good 12 volt power source there that is constant power, and you won't lose it no matter if the key's on, key's off, headlights are on, headlights are off, whatever. And again, you want to check them in all positions. You can see we're getting 12 volts here. You want to check these in all positions. That's parking lights. It was from auto to parking lights. Still has full power. You know, you're going to see some drop, but it's still basically 12 volts. That's lights on, and that's off. Lights off. Again, lights on, even fog lights on, off. So no matter what, you have 12 volts there, and you want to check all those different settings to make sure that you're not going to lose your power when you turn on your fog lights, or when you go to parking lot, or when you go to auto, or whatever. So you just want to make sure that you test it in all of the different settings to make sure that it's going to act right. Okay guys, so we figured out where we're going to wire everything up, what wires we're going to tie into, and for what reason. We've used the multimeter to test literally every possible function to make sure that everything's going to work well. We're going to use this bolt right here for the ground. If you pull this away, you can see where I'm at. It's going to be a good ground. It's a bare bolt. It's not painted, and it goes into the frame over some more bare metal. So it's going to be a really great ground. That's what we're going to use. We found our key on source, our constant source, our illumination source, and of course we're going to use that as our ground. So that's everything you need for this. It's just a pretty simple little 4-wire setup. Just the big problem is figuring out how you're going to use everything. So now that we have everything taken apart, we can get to everything real easy. We can wire everything up, make it look all really nice and professional. Tie everything up with zip ties, keep everything out of the way. Make sure you keep your clutch pedal clear, or your brake pedal, both, all of them. You know, especially if it's a 5-speed car, you want to make sure you keep your clutch pedal clear, because it causes more problems being the clutch pedal's further over to the left, over where you're doing your wiring and running your vacuum hose and stuff like that. so you can easily get bound up with the clutch pedal and cause problems and rip things apart. And if you're boosted, you'll pull your boost line and you have a boost leak or a vacuum leak, and just a bunch of problems. So be careful, pay attention to what you're doing, take your time, don't rush through it, do a good job, you know, make it look nice, be happy with it when you're done, and don't wish you had done something different. So that's my advice for now. I'll come back when we get it kind of more buttoned up and back together, and I'll show you it working and all that. So this is important so that you know sometimes things can go wrong and it's kind of outside of your control. You can wire up everything correctly, and sometimes the item itself is no good. So we've got everything wired up in this Mustang and powered up correctly, key on, constant, illumination and ground. That's all it really takes for these. We found the correct wires to tap into, and when we turn the headlights on, nothing happens. So that could be a problem, right? So we turn the key on to make sure that's not the issue. Key on, still nothing. Lights off, lights on. So beginner in something like this may think automatically, oh, I've done something wrong. There is a problem that I did, right? No, not necessarily. So what you need to know is, even if you're beginning at this stuff, you can go through and check to make sure the work that you've done is correct. So what you do is you pull this is your power wire, this leads off, this is an electronic boost gauge, it doesn't have a vacuum straight to the gauge, it has a vacuum to a sensor, and the sensor feeds the gauge the information, but this harness here is your key on, ground, illumination, and constant power. So what you can do there then is have your multimeter and start checking these things. So your constant power being the red on the far right, check that for constant power. And we may have lost our ground. Yeah, we lost our ground. It's another important thing not to doubt yourself on is when you're right, you're right. Just know you're right. You know? Grab yourself a good ground, which I'm actually grabbing the ground right where this gauge is grounded anyways, to know, okay, so we have 12 volts there on the far right, right? Okay, so then we move over one to the orange, which is illumination. We have nothing now, but when you turn the lights on, we have 12 volts. So, you know, that's correct. And when you turn it off, you lose your 12 volts. And this is right at the back of the gauge, so you know that it's correct. So then you move on to your last wire to the far left. Well, there's also the ground. We'll check that in a minute. Your last wire to the far left, though, is the wire that's supposed to have power when the key is on. The key is off now, so it doesn't have power. So then we'll turn the key on, and sure enough, 12 volts. Well, it's 11.5, but call it 12, right? So, key off, we lose that voltage. So that's wired correctly. So then how you check your ground is go ahead and stick it in your ground hole, or your ground receiver, whatever you want to call it, not to be nasty. And anyway, so then you'll move your multimeter over to the omega symbol, which has that checks continuity. So continuity is at 0.1, which is really good. That's plenty for a little gauge like this. It should be firing up just fine. So that leads us to conclude that most likely the gauge is bad. The gauge itself is bad. So then, you know, you plug it back into its power slot, which there is another slot here which I've tried. That's actually to piggyback the next gauge. If you have multiple gauges up this pillar, you piggyback off each one and they'd each grab power from each other. I've tried to give both sides power, nothing's working. Again, gauge is off, you know, lights are on, still not even the illumination is working. And make sure those lights are on, headlights on. And then again, one last time to show you, key on, still nothing. So that leads me to believe that there's something wrong with the gauge itself. So I've let the owner of this car know that there's a problem with the gauge. I've already checked all the wiring, it's correct. And the next step from there is to get another gauge or get a different brand gauge. This one happens to be an On3 Performance, and he's calling the company now to see if they can warranty it out or what, but it's a Saturday, so we may not be able to get a hold of it. We'll let you know what happens. So this is the first time I've seen this happen. Got the gauge to work, as you can see. The oddest thing, as you saw just a few seconds ago, there was 12 volts to it before, right? You saw that. It was, well, I mean 11.6 or whatever, but it's, you know, when you turn on your headlights, voltage drops a little, it's normal. but 11.6 should still be more than enough to power up a little gauge like this. The weirdest thing though is that the owner of the car said he got on the form for the site that provides the turbo kit for this car, and oops, excuse my hand there, and he said that some other people had similar issues and they got around that issue by running to a different power source, like a standalone power source, like maybe say directly to the battery. Of course, you want a fuse link. Don't ever run power directly to the battery. You can burn your car down like that. But you know, for testing's sake, I just jumped straight to the battery just to see if that was going to be accurate or not. And sure enough, it turned on. You know, it's so odd to me that one 12-volt source is not equal to the other 12-volt source. I've been wrenching on cars for a long time, and I've never come into something like this before, and where, you know, one 12-volt source works and the other 12-volt source does not. That's super strange to me, but one way or the other, these guys on that forum were correct, and thank you guys for your help on that. I don't even know who you are. The owner of the car got in contact with you separately, but it worked. So I'm going to jump into where that person on that forum said, which is into the fuse box over here in the passenger floorboard. He recommended number 33. I looked it up in the manual, in the car's manual, and the car's manual calls number 33 not used, but there is a 10 amp fuse there. So we'll just go down and grab an ATA link from, you know, AutoZone, O'Reilly's, Advanced, wherever you care to go, and add that link in there. Stretch across the power wire for that. You know, obviously that's going to be fused that way and not run into any dangers of running an unfused link, which is super sketchy. I would never recommend doing that. But yeah, it's wild enough, but there it is. So we're gonna button all this up and get all this, you know, put away and put back together and tidy up. And of course that power wire ran, and owner will have his car back, and I'm sure he'll be happy to have it later. Okay guys, so like I was saying, the wiring on this was just kind of odd. I guess for whatever reason, the 12 volts you pull off the switch just doesn't work for whatever reason, and I was able to get it powered up by running power from the fuse box on the unused number 33 slot. Just get you an ATA link or an ATA circuit, whatever you want to call it. Add in that circuit and run the wiring across, you know, behind the dash, and hide it all, zip tie it up, make it look nice, all that kind of stuff, and just run into where your power runs for this. All the other wiring is going to work fine. It's working fine. I'll show you here in a second. It still just boggles my mind why this 12 volt source wasn't working and that 12 volt source is working. They're both 12 volts. They both read the exact same numbers on the multimeter. Everything seemed to be the same. It's just odd to me when it doesn't work. Anyways, here we go. Key on. Goes through its cycle. Fires up, and there it is. Right? And then this is lights off. This is parking lights. This is headlights, fog lights, and then automatic. So it's automatic with fogs, automatic without fogs. So you can see how it works. There's off. Kind of brightens up a little bit when you turn everything off, which is cool. For daytime use, you can still be able to read it real well during the daytime because this is a blackout gauge. So when you turn everything off, it blacks out pretty good. You can see it a little bit, but not quite. But anyways, just thought I'd finish that up and show you guys that, and that's a wrap. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.